Go Jackets.
Good afternoon, all, and welcome to WreckTalk. So, I know I'm a little late to the party. The ACC seems to be in trouble. So let's go back to the beginning in case you've been living under a rock. Probably in the most tumultuous conference realignment era we've ever had or time in college football. Obviously, like USC and Cal are going to the Big Ten. Texas and Oklahoma are going to the SEC. The Pac-12 is probably in worse shape than the ACC is in right now. Big 12 is bringing in the best group of 5 schools, but probably will not be looked at as a Power 5 conference any longer. And the ACC's problem started when Clemson and Florida State basically came out and said, look, we're bringing in the majority of the money to the ACC, and we're not being fairly compensated for that. And basically voiced yearnings to want to leave. Now, the ACC has this grant of rights deal that runs through 2036 that says if you want to leave the ACC, basically you forfeit all your media rights until 2036. So if Florida State wanted to go, let's say the SEC or Big Ten, they'd basically lose like $1 billion in media revenue. So there's no way they would want to do that, and that conference wouldn't gain any money from your media rights either. It would all go to the ACC. Now, I also think it's like $120 million you have to pay to the ACC to leave. So there is a kind of backdoor clause if 8 or more teams agree to disband, then I believe that trumps the deal. Then it's a free for all. Every ACC team for themselves. And the latest news is this magnificent 7. So Florida State, Clemson, Miami, North Carolina, NC State, Virginia, and Virginia Tech have all said that they would be okay with disbanding the ACC. The word is the other 7 teams say no. We don't want to do that. More on that in a second. And as I said in the last video, and I know there's some people that disagree, but I do think the ACC's really boggled this. I get the point of the grant of rights is to do what it's doing, which is making it, basically keeping the ACC together and keeping it from disbanding. But here's the thing. In my opinion, the ACC should have been far more proactive in basically courting. Like we should be probably merging with the Big 12 or pulling teams in from the Big 12 right now. That should have already been in place, and working on getting a more lucrative revenue deal. Right now it's with ESPN, I believe. But when there's enough money on the table, and the way teams like Clemson and Florida State, and probably all these magnificent 7 schools are looking at this is, well, the Big 12, for instance, those teams are making about $30 million more a year in their revenue share for the conference than we are. So they're looking at it as we're losing $30 million a year. So even if we had to pay the ACC $120 million, let's set aside the grant of rights right now. Even if we had to pay the SEC, or not the SEC, the ACC $120 million to leave, well, hell, in 4 years, we can pay them back, and we didn't have to borrow anything, really. Or I don't know, maybe you have to pay that all up front, but basically in 4 years it's paid for without us doing anything, just because the revenue share is so much more advantageous. Now, as far as the grant of rights deal, there are rumblings that Louisville could be the 8th, and if they were to step up, the ACC would disband. Now, is this just posturing by these 7 schools and possibly Louisville? Yes and no. I think that it is a warning shot to the ACC to say, look, y'all absolutely have to get up off the floor and do something now. We got to do something now. I don't think it's an empty threat, though. Like I said, when there's this much money on the table, they're going to get the best lawyers money combined, find a way out of this grant of rights. That they will find a way out of it. Or, I don't know, maybe you just give the ACC the middle finger, leave, and then 10 years later when, the ACC litigation between you and the ACC is over, it doesn't matter because you already made so much money. But I do think that they will find a way out of this grant of rights. And look, I guess if 8 disband, it's over anyway. So what does this mean for teams like Georgia Tech that aren't in the Magnificent Seven? I know C-Dog was pretty down on Tech, and honestly has every right to be. Tech has historically been way behind the times on things like this. But I am actually going to give Jay Batt the benefit of the doubt and say I think he is being proactive, and I think he has things in place. For instance, and he couldn't talk about this like publicly, obviously. I think he's already reached out to the Big Ten and might even have a preliminary understanding that, like, hey, if the ACC crumbles, let's get something already kind of in the works for Tech to come to the Big Ten. I do think that Tech is attractive to the Big Ten because it gets them into the Georgia market and the Atlanta market. I know if you watch any of Vic's streams, like TriStar, Tennessee man wants Tech to come back to the SEC, and I think Mike C-Dog would like to go back to the SEC as well, but it just doesn't make any sense from the SEC's perspective to take Tech because the University of Georgia already has that market locked down. But it does make sense for the Big Ten, and like I said, I think Jay Batt, and I'm going to even give Cabrera the benefit that they're already proactive and are in talks with the Big 12 in the event that the ACC crumbles. Now, I am not nearly as optimistic about what the ACC is going to do. I think that the ACC just believes that this grant of rights has everyone locked in, and there's nothing that's going to implode the ACC. And as much as I hate to say it, I think the ACC will disband at some point. Like I said, when there's this much money to be gained, teams are going to find a way to get out of this thing, and enough teams will probably vote to disband as they see $30 million left on the table year after year. Now, the other thing is this good for college football? I don't think so. Just having 2 conferences, basically, that are relevant in any meaningful way, I don't think is good for college football. C-Dog actually talked about it, like regionality is part of college football and the tradition, like Pac-12 having kind of the West, the Big Ten being in the Northeast area, SEC obviously having the Southeast, ACC being up the coast. Like these things matter, and like I said, just having two teams that are, or two conferences that are relevant, like it's just not good. If your team isn't in one of those two conferences, I mean, you might even just stop watching college football. Now, I guess there is a conversation to be had with the playoffs expanding and giving room for other teams making it in. But if there's only two relevant conferences and you're not in them, recruiting is going to be really difficult, no matter who you are, if you're not in those conferences. So you're probably just going to get slaughtered once you get to the playoffs. So it would never happen, but I'd really like, it'd be nice if the NCAA was really stepping into and trying to do what they can to make sure this doesn't happen. Now they won't do that because they've lost like 1,000 straight lawsuits. Evidently, they're terrified of being litigated against, and the Big Ten and SEC might, if they were pressed, just give them the middle finger and say, we'll start our own league and we'll disband from the NCAA. So I'm not sure what will happen. I am sure that if the ACC does nothing, you will find 8 teams that want to break out of the ACC. And the ACC hasn't done anything yet to make me think that they're going to court other teams or they're going to be proactive in any way. Like I said, I think their opinion is just this grant of rights deal is going to save the day. So, and the other thing is, I think ESPN needs to be smart too. I mean, they have this thing locked down, but not if the market doesn't exist anymore. So maybe they'll be willing to play ball as well. I guess last word is I do think Tech will be okay no matter what happens. I mean, their academics line up with the Big Ten, and the Big Ten wants to, I'm sure, step into that Georgia market. I hope it doesn't go there. Like, I love the ACC. If you guys don't watch the ACC show, you need to be. It would break my heart if the ACC disbanded, but I don't really have any reason to think that this is going to get any better. So, guys, let me know what you think. Can the ACC survive this? Can they bring some teams in from the Pac-12? Will ESPN work with the ACC? Will it just disband and teams go to the Big Ten? Now that brings up a whole other thing of like, you're going to have a scheduling nightmare if you add any more teams to the SEC or the Big Ten. I mean, if you added any more teams, those teams, if they wanted to have, every team wanted to play each other in a reasonable amount of time, you wouldn't be able to schedule non-con, which would just, I mean, that's almost like a positive feedback loop and making this a whole lot worse. So anyways, let me know what you think, guys, and I will talk to you soon.